Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is immigration attorney Lina Baroudi. Lina, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Brittany.
Denaturalization is a conversation being revisited by the Trump administration after two members of the National Guard were shot in D.C. in an attack the day before Thanksgiving. One of the troops died from her injuries while the other remains in serious condition. The suspected gunman is an Afghan national who worked with our military during the war in Afghanistan. He came to America in 2021 through Biden's Operation Allies Welcome program following the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. He was granted asylum by the Trump administration this year, but when President Trump was asked about denaturalization days after the attack, this is how the president responded in part. Quote, "If we have criminals that came into our country and they were naturalized, maybe through Biden or somebody that didn't know what they were doing, if I have the power to do it, I'm not sure that I do, but if I do, I would denaturalize absolutely." So to start off this conversation, as an immigration attorney, I'm curious, does President Trump have the power to do that? Can someone who's naturalized be stripped of citizenship?
Someone who is naturalized in the U.S. can only be denaturalized through a legal process in a U.S. district court. So it's a very complicated process and it's very rare. And in order to begin denaturalization proceedings, the U.S. Attorney's Office would have to file a complaint with the district court alleging that there was something in the original application that made the individual not eligible for naturalization at the time. So, for example, if the person committed fraud in their naturalization application, or they left out a group that they were a member of, and that was material to their citizenship claim, those people can be denaturalized. That's always been true even before what happened in DC.
And you mentioned that that process is difficult. It's very rare. I mean, how long exactly does that take?
My experience with denaturalization cases is that most people end up settling with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Most cases that you see in denaturalization proceedings, and they're very, very rare, it's people who misrepresented on their naturalization application. For example, they had committed a crime and they had a conviction and they didn't list it, and it was a material fact that went to their eligibility for naturalization. Most people, from what I have seen, is they settle with the U.S. Attorney's Office, they agree to be denaturalized, and they end up keeping their green card. I have not personally seen a denaturalization case go to trial, but I imagine if it did, it would take years.
I know that you said earlier in this conversation that the Trump administration isn't the first to denaturalize or have this come up, but the DOJ back in June released a memo saying they were prioritizing denaturalization. And they laid out some examples that you've mentioned, like if someone lied on their application. They also said that they could revoke citizenship if someone's committed war crimes or they're a threat to the United States. So how seriously is the Trump administration prioritizing denaturalization? Are they going after this much more aggressively than administrations past?
I think the running theme in this administration in regards to immigration is panic and fear and intimidation. So I think there's a lot of talk and a lot less of what's actually happening. Under the Biden administration, we saw about 11 denaturalization cases opened per year. That doesn't mean that many people were denaturalized. It just means that many were open. In the first Trump administration, it was 25. At this point, they haven't reported how many. But the denaturalization process has always been around. It's not something that this administration has created. If someone is politically not aligned with the administration, they cannot be denaturalized. The Supreme Court has already spoken that you cannot use the denaturalization process to punish someone for their political opinion, even under the guise of it being anti-American.
I've talked to other attorneys in the past, and some of their criticisms about President Trump are that he has weaponized or attempted to weaponize the DOJ to go after political opponents, like former FBI Director James Comey, as well as New York Attorney General Letitia James. And I know that you've said that there's law preventing a president or an administration going after a naturalized citizen and trying to denaturalize them. But how difficult or hard would it be for President Trump or any administration to target someone, go after a naturalized citizen, and try to revoke their citizenship?
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head. This is exactly what this administration does. And this is the thing that's confusing about naturalization applications and even green card applications. As we saw in the last year, the administration went after pro-Palestinian anti-Zionist activists and dug up information in their green card and created this idea that they left things out that were material. The problem with green card applications and citizenship applications is you don't know how much to disclose because there's not a universal application of the law. I can give an example. I was at a citizenship application 2 weeks ago, and the officer asked my client, "Have you been a member of any groups?" And my client said, "Does X group count?" It was something like a Costco membership, right? And the officer says, "I don't care." A week later, same question, different officer, and the officer says, "You have to list every group, however you define membership." So yes, the Trump administration can always go back and open people's applications and on a technicality, use that to denaturalize them or try to take away their green card.
I know that you're saying that this process is really rare, but since this conversation has come up, do you think naturalized citizens should be concerned right now?
I think everyone should be concerned right now. We've seen US citizens who were born in the US being arrested and having their rights trampled on. So, yes, I think naturalized citizens should be aware of what's going on. They should be scared. As I've told my clients, everyone is subject to arrest. Whether or not you're a US citizen, we see that people are being arrested. As far as denaturalization proceedings, I think if people's applications were 100% complete and they did not leave something off that was material, like a political alliance or a membership in a group or a conviction, they should be fine. But of course, there's no guarantees under this administration.
And I know that you said that it's a lengthy legal process, but let's say that you've renounced past citizenship from another country. You're stripped of your citizenship in the United States. Where does that leave you?
I actually deal with this issue quite a bit in my practice. You would be stateless. If you don't have citizenship in any country, you are stateless. And essentially, the US cannot remove you to any country unless that country will accept you. And most countries will not accept someone without a travel document. So we see this, for example, with Palestinians who are stateless. They don't have citizenship in any country. We've seen this with Russians who are from former Soviet countries who never got citizenship from Russia or their birth country. So this is a problem. It makes people stateless, it strips them of their identity, and it leaves them in limbo. And ironically, most stateless people cannot be deported from the United States.
So let's talk about that. If you're stateless and you can't be deported from the United States, where do you go?
You live here under an order of supervision and you get a work permit every year. And once this administration came into office, many stateless people who have been reporting every year for decades were taken into custody. And we're challenging those detentions through habeas because nothing has changed except the administration has changed. They say ICE says that they are trying to get travel documents for these individuals, but the reality is they've previously tried and failed. So now, as a punitive measure, stateless individuals are being held in custody until a district court judge orders their release.
And President Trump, since campaigning to run for president the first time, he has ran on being the person who's going to be really tough on immigration. This shooting seems to have been the catalyst for an even tougher crackdown. I want to read something that he posted after the shooting. "I will permanently pause migration from all third world countries to allow the U.S. system to fully recover. Terminate all of the millions of Biden illegal admissions, including those signed by Sleepy Joe Biden's auto pen, and remove anyone who is not a net asset to the United States or is incapable of loving our country, and all federal benefits and subsidies to non-citizens of our country, denaturalize migrants who undermine domestic tranquility, and deport any foreign national who is a public charge, security risk, or non-compatible with Western civilization." Legally, how can he do this? And how does the Trump administration decide who's a net asset to the United States and who is here to undermine domestic tranquility?
What Trump does is use social media to scare people, intimidate people. Every time he posts something like this, we get so many calls of people saying exactly these things. Can he do this? How does this affect my case? The reality is, what happened in DC was awful, but that individual is one individual. And what the administration doesn't do is mention his background, which is that he worked for the US government as part of a death squad. He needed he needed mental health services. And this is true of most Afghans that worked with the US government. The fact that he entered as a refugee or that he got a green card or that he'll eventually become a citizen is not the relevant point here. Refugees and asylees are one of the most vetted group in the United States. They go through so many different layers of vetting before they're even allowed to enter the US. And naturalization of refugees and asylees is less than 10% of all naturalizations.
I know that you said earlier in this conversation that President Trump couldn't go after his political opponents, but in this statement, does he leave room for almost a slippery slope? Because he said he could naturalize migrants who undermine domestic tranquility. I mean, how do you measure that? Because obviously this shooting is horrific, but can people's words, according to President Trump, undermine domestic tranquility? I mean, what does that really look like?
It looks like litigation. All these cases are going to go up into the district court. They're all going to be challenged. I mean, there's lawsuits filed every single day against this administration. There is no way that you can put a limit on someone's freedom of expression or freedom of political opinion in order not to naturalize them or give them a green card. This is completely against Supreme Court precedent. The Supreme Court has spoken on this multiple times. The administration basically throws what it can against the wall and sees what sticks. And they know that what they're doing is tying lawyers up in litigation on things that are completely unconstitutional.
So as an immigration attorney, what specifically are you looking out for next?
Right now, the highest number of cases we are seeing are people being detained. So habeas petitions have taken a lot of our attention. People who are being put into deportation proceedings that have been in the US for years, people who are being arrested at interviews. Detention is the big thing right now, and that's intentional, not only to create intimidation and panic in the immigration community, but to make sure that immigration attorneys are spending most of their time litigating and not focusing on other applications and benefits.
Well, I don't think that this is the end of this conversation, that's for sure. And as we see more developments and more play out, I hope you can come back on and join me and break it down. Lina Baroudi, thank you so much for the time. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you, Brittany.